The sting of the winter wind was a familiar friend, a colder companion than any wolf in the Sunstone pack. Elara's fingers, raw and red, fumbled with a snagged thread in the fishing net. The scent of wood smoke and roasting meat drifted from the communal hall, a cruel reminder of the feast she wasn't partaking in. Her stomach rumbled. It was a dull ache now. They called her empty-headed because her memories were a patchwork of fog and fleeting shadows. She hadn't known her parents. She didn't know herself. "Still struggling with those knots, Elara?" The voice, sharp as ice chips, belonged to Lyra. Lyra was a she-wolf with a laugh that bit, and eyes always too curious about Elara's emptiness. "Maybe your hands forgot how to work, just like your mind forgot everything else." Elara's jaw tightened. She kept her gaze on the rough twine. No matter how hard she tried, the words always found their mark. Lyra's sneer made her skin prickle. "Some of us actually contribute to the pack, Elara, not just exist." A cold weight settled in Elara's chest. Her misbelief, that her amnesia made her worthless, pressed down harder. What was the point of remembering when her present was just this? She wished a strong wind would just sweep her away. Anything but this daily, quiet suffocation. Yet, deep down, she knew the truth. She kept enduring. She always had. Survival was her only real talent, a dark kind of strength. Suddenly, a shadow fell over her. Elder Maeve, her face usually a tapestry of gentle wrinkles, was grim. Maeve never looked grim unless something truly bad was happening. Elara's heart skipped. A beat later, Maeve's voice, usually soft as spun wool, was flat and hard. "Elara, come. The Alpha wishes to speak with you." Her tone carried an unusual finality, a chilling certainty that went beyond a simple summons. Something was very wrong. The Alpha's den smelled of stale ambition and too much ale. Alpha Theron sat on his raised stone seat, his eyes like chips of flint. Beside him stood his beta, Garrick, a hulking wolf whose shadow seemed to swallow the flickering torchlight. Elara stood before them, feeling smaller than ever. "Elara," Alpha Theron began, his voice a low growl that vibrated in her bones. "Our pack faces, a grave challenge, an ancient debt, a blood debt." Elara's breath caught. She didn't know what scared her more, the words blood debt, or the look on Theron's face. It was the look of a wolf making a difficult but decided kill. "What kind of debt, Alpha?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Her primary goal was to understand, to brace herself. Garrick stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the light. "A debt to the Lycan King, girl. 5 seasons ago, our elders, your so-called kin, made a pact. They traded a promise for protection, a promise that has come due." Protection? From what? Another open loop. Elara's mind raced, trying to grasp the implications. She felt a surge of panic, a desperate need to flee. But where would she go? She had nowhere. "And I am the payment?" The words tasted like ashes on her tongue. Theron nodded, no mercy in his gaze. "You are an offering. The king requires a bride. Our pack has no suitable, unmated females of stature. But you, Elara. No family to mourn you. No ties to bind us. Your memory is a blank slate. You are easily forgotten. A clean slate, for a new beginning with the Lycan King." He made her sound like a discarded tool, not a living being. The casual dismissal cut through her shock, leaving a cold, hollow space. She knew she was an outcast, but this, to be traded like cattle, it stripped away any lingering hope of belonging. The wolves in the hall muttered, their whispers like buzzing insects. "The beast, they say he's truly gone feral. His castle is a tomb." Elara felt a chill deeper than the winter air outside. She was not just traded. She was sentenced. Come morning, the air bit with a vengeance. 2 grim-faced warriors, their faces shrouded by hoods, stood waiting for her outside the Alpha's den. They were not from her pack, not really. They were loyal to Theron, nothing more. A worn satchel, containing little more than a coarse cloak and a half-loaf of bread, was thrust into her hands. This was it. There was no going back. The journey began in silence. The path soon turned from the familiar, snow-dusted forest to open, desolate plains. The wind whipped her hair, lashing her face with tiny shards of ice. Every step crunched in the fresh snow, a stark, lonely sound. She tried to cling to any memory of her old life, of her pack. But her mind remained stubbornly blank. It was a dark, empty pit. She clutched the satchel to her chest, her only comfort. Maybe her parents, whoever they were, had known love. Maybe they had held her just as tightly. A flicker of warmth, then gone. Hours bled into days. They passed crumbling stone structures, ancient ruins half buried by drifts of snow. Each one felt haunted, their silent forms casting long skeletal shadows. Elara shivered, not just from the cold, but from an unsettling sense of foreboding. These places, these forgotten stones. They felt familiar, in a way she couldn't grasp, like a half-forgotten dream. Why did her chest ache when she saw them? Because of that, a tiny seed of fear, darker than the shadows, began to sprout within her. This place, it felt like it knew her. This was more than just a punishment. This was something deeper, something she couldn't name. It was a terrifying truth she kept locked away. Then, just as the sky darkened to a bruised purple, it appeared. Far on the horizon, massive and terrifying, stood the Lycan King's castle. Its spires, jagged and black, clawed at the clouds. It looked less like a home and more like a mausoleum carved from ice and shadow. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't just a place of dread. It was a place of broken things. What followed was a stark realization. She wasn't just going to a king. She was going to a tomb. The heavy iron gate scraped open with a groan that seemed to tear at the cold air. It slammed shut behind Elara, its clang echoing through the vast, empty courtyard. She stood alone. The wind, a biting phantom, swirled snow around her feet. Her breath plumed in the frigid air. This castle, looming like a jagged mountain range, felt alive with a silent, ancient malevolence. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird desperate for escape. She stepped inside, 1 foot at a time. The grand entrance hall was immense, shadowed, and colder than the outside. Tapestries, brittle with age, hung in tatters from the high walls. Dust motes danced in the sparse light filtering through grimy, arched windows. Each step on the cold stone floor sent an unsettling echo through the cavernous space. Where was the king? The question pulsed in her mind. What kind of king lived in such a ruined, desolate place? Then, a sound. It wasn't a human cough or a wolf's bark. It was a guttural rumble, deep and primal, that vibrated up from the floor. Elara froze. The air thickened. A shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness at the far end of the hall. It moved with a terrifying grace, too large, too powerful to be anything but what the whispers had warned her of. A Lycan. Not shifted, not human, but something in between. A hulking, savage beast. Its fur was matted, its claws long, and its teeth. She could see them glinting even in the gloom. This was no king. This was a monster. Its eyes, however, were the true horror. Molten gold, they burned with a raw, agonizing torment. As if pulled by a string, their eyes locked. In that moment, a flicker ignited deep within Elara. Not fear alone, but a profound, unsettling recognition. Her own body moved on instinct, stepping back, breath caught. The beast stalked her, circling slowly, a predator assessing its prey. A low grrr-roll rose from its chest, not threatening, but filled with a sorrow so profound it echoed the mournful howl she'd heard stories of. It raised a massive paw, not to strike but to slam against a stone pillar with a resounding crack. A sound of pure, frustrated agony. Then, just like that, it turned, melting back into the shadows, leaving her alone, trembling, but miraculously alive. Her immediate goal was to find a hiding place, anything to escape this terrifying guardian. That night, sleep was a cruel joke. Elara huddled in a forgotten servant's pantry, a small space smelling faintly of dust and dried herbs. Her teeth chattered, but it wasn't just the cold. The beast's eyes haunted her. Those golden eyes. Why had they felt so familiar? It was a maddening question that circled in her mind endlessly. Maybe it was fate that her memories were gone. Because if she remembered something so terrible, she'd surely go mad. She explored the castle in the hours that followed, moving like a ghost through the labyrinthine halls. Each grand room was a monument to decay. Elegant tapestries hung in shreds, like old dreams. Shattered furniture lay scattered like broken bones. Claw marks, deep and savage, gouged the stone walls and scarred ancient wooden doors. These marks spoke of raw power, untamed rage. Yet, amidst the destruction, she found strange, almost human remnants. A beautifully carved wooden bird half buried under rubble, a delicate silver hair comb resting on a dust-covered window ledge. These tiny things seemed so out of place. They felt like whispers of a life, a king who had once lived here. Her stomach growled a hollow ache. She needed food, water. Her survival depended on it. She imagined fleeing, running away from the desolate castle back to her pack. But then, she remembered the sneer on Theron's face, the cold indifference of her pack. Where would she go? She was truly alone. Even so, a desperate determination sparked within her. She wouldn't just sit here and freeze. She wouldn't starve. She wouldn't surrender to despair. This wasn't her end. As the silence stretched, she imagined the beast. Was it watching her, stalking her? Or was it just as much a prisoner as she was? She didn't know what scared her more, the beast's raw power or the mournful howls that occasionally echoed through the castle, sounds of profound sorrow that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. Her chest ached with a strange mix of fear and an unexpected, unsettling sympathy. The ache pulled at something deep inside her. Her thirst was a burning in her throat, her stomach cramped with hunger. These primal needs forced Elara out of her hiding spot, pushing her past the suffocating fear. She found her way to a neglected kitchen pantry, drawn by a faint, earthy smell. Inside, she discovered a few moldy roots and a single cracked earthenware jug of brackish water. It wasn't much, but it was enough. While she cautiously ate a piece of root, she heard it again, the heavy, shuffling steps of the beast. They were close. Her breath caught. Instead of freezing, she pulled herself behind an overturned stone table, peering through a crack. The beast lumbered into the adjacent, ruined dining hall. It wasn't looking for her. It was pacing, back and forth. A trapped animal in a cage too large for it. Its head hung low. From there, it moved to a dusty, faded tapestry hanging on the wall, sniffing at it, a low whimper escaping its throat. It was not just a monster. It was tormented. A new goal formed in Elara's mind. She had to understand. She had to learn. She wouldn't be a victim. She would be an observer. Because of that, a tiny spark of courage, fragile but real, flickered within her. This beast, so terrifying, was also clearly suffering. Maybe she could figure it out. How could she survive if she didn't try to understand her jailer? She saw the deep, festering wound on its flank, dark and swollen. It looked painful. Not only that, but it looked infected. As the silence roared, a strange idea took root. What if she could help it? It was a crazy thought, but it refused to leave her mind. It wasn't about trust. It was about survival. If she could alleviate its pain, perhaps it would be less dangerous. Perhaps she could show it she wasn't a threat. Before she could move, the beast shifted, letting out a frustrated groan. It collapsed onto the floor, a massive heap of fur and misery. In the stillness that followed, Elara took a piece of the dried meat from her satchel. With every heartbeat, she crept to the edge of her hiding spot. She placed the meat and a small cracked bowl of water a few feet from the sleeping beast. She didn't know if it would be accepted. She didn't know if it would attack her for the gesture. She didn't know what would happen next. The scent of stale air and ancient stone had become Elara's constant companion. Every morning, before the weak light of the sun touched the frosty windows, she began her ritual. Her heart still pounded with a frantic rhythm, but it was a familiar beat now. She would gather what meager food she could find, dry roots, perhaps a sliver of preserved meat, and leave it in the desolate dining hall where she'd first encountered him. She chose a spot near the grand broken fireplace, a place that felt somehow less threatening. She always spoke softly, as if not to startle a skittish deer. "Just some food for you," she'd murmur, her voice a fragile ribbon in the vast silence. "I hope you find it." Her words were offerings, just like the food. She hoped they conveyed peace, not fear. After that, she would retreat quickly, hiding behind a crumbling archway, her breath held tight in her chest. She listened. No matter how hard she tried, she rarely saw the beast. But the food would be gone when she returned, always gone. This routine became her anchor in the terrifying, frozen castle. It wasn't just about survival, it was about building a bridge, however small, to the wild, tormented thing that owned this place. She learned his patterns. He seemed to prefer the shadowy western wing during the day, where the light barely touched the stone. At night, his restless pacing echoed through the eastern corridors, a mournful symphony of a trapped spirit. What followed was a strange sense of companionship, even without seeing him. She was feeding a ghost, a legend, but a living one. One evening, as the sky outside bled from bruised purple to inky black, Elara left a small portion of a wild hare she'd managed to trap near the beast's favored alcove. She watched, hidden, for what felt like hours. Then, a low rumble. The beast, Alaric, emerged from the deepest shadows. His fur, thick and dark, seemed to absorb the meager light. He moved with a lumbering grace. He sniffed the air. He didn't look at the food first. Instead, his golden eyes, still burning with that primal anguish, swept over the alcove where she usually hid. He paused. He dipped his head, tore at the meat, and then... He carefully pushed the empty bowl back with his nose, nudging it forward a few inches. A deliberate act. A response. Elara's breath hitched. Her heart skipped. The silence roared around her. It was a terrifying grace. The carefully returned bowl sent a shiver down Elara's spine. It wasn't just a sign of acceptance, it felt like a silent acknowledgement. This beast, it wasn't mindless. That meant there was hope. Truth be told, this realization scared her almost as much as the beast's initial ferocity. What if he was just playing with her? Still, she kept talking to him, soft words whispered into the echoing halls. She spoke of the mundane, the biting cold, the crumbling tapestries, the loneliness that felt like a second skin. She even talked about her lost memories. "I don't remember who I was," she murmured one afternoon, her voice thick with old sorrow. "It's like a piece of me is just... gone." One day, while exploring a ruined library, she accidentally knocked over a stack of brittle, forgotten scrolls. The crash echoed like thunder in the quiet hall. Her heart leaped to her throat. She froze, expecting the beast's immediate wrath. Moments later, a shadow fell across the doorway. Alaric. He stood there, immense and still, his golden eyes fixed on her. He didn't growl. He didn't lunge. He simply watched. His chest heaved with slow, deliberate breaths. Then a low hump sound, almost a sigh, rumbled from his throat. Just like that, he turned and melted back into the shadows. Elara slowly let out the breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. He hadn't attacked. He had observed. This was a monumental shift. It confirmed her growing suspicion. He wasn't purely feral. There was something else, something hidden deep inside. As a result, her fear began to intertwine with a profound curiosity. She didn't know what it meant, but it was a glimmer. That night, she found a small, intricately carved wooden bird near where she'd left his food. Its feathers were detailed, its eyes tiny, polished stones. It was clearly old, a relic from the castle's past. Had the beast placed it there? For her? A shiver, not of fear but of wonder, went through her. This gift, this small, beautiful thing, was a silent answer to her whispered words. It was a language without words. Elara clutched the bird, its smooth wood warm in her palm. The simple act melted a piece of the icy wall around her heart. It was a tangible sign that her efforts were being seen, perhaps even understood. What did this mean? Driven by the discovery of the wooden bird, a new hope blossomed within Elara, fragile as a winter flower. She decided to explore a section of the castle map she'd found in the library, a faded drawing of what looked like a courtyard. Soon after, she stumbled upon it, a hidden, overgrown garden nestled within tall, crumbling stone walls. Despite the perpetual winter outside, pockets of resilient evergreens and hardy, dormant roses clung to life here, protected by the castle's ruined embrace. The air in this courtyard felt different, less frigid, almost hopeful. It was still winter, but she saw the promise of spring. She began to spend her afternoons there, clearing debris, tending to the hardy plants, coaxing life from the frozen ground. The simple act of pulling weeds was a meditation, a small victory against the overwhelming desolation. One crisp afternoon, as she hummed a tune she faintly recalled from her forgotten past, a lullaby perhaps, she felt it, a presence, not a threat, not exactly, but a heavy, watching stillness. She didn't turn around right away. Her pulse raced. As if summoned, Alaric emerged. He stepped out from behind a snow-laden evergreen into the soft, muted light of the courtyard. He stood there, immense and shadowed, his golden eyes fixed on her. He didn't approach. He didn't retreat. He just watched, his massive chest rising and falling with slow, rhythmic breaths. Elara cautiously continued her work, humming the lullaby a little louder. She didn't look at him directly. "It's a beautiful garden, isn't it?" she murmured, pulling a persistent weed. "Even with winter, there's so much life here." The beast let out a low, rumbling sound. It wasn't a growl. It was a deep sigh, a contentment. He slowly lowered himself to the ground, settling his massive form near the edge of the courtyard, still watching her. His head rested on his paws. This was it, their first truly shared space. Elara felt a profound sense of wonder, a strange, almost maternal protectiveness towards this tormented creature. She saw his vulnerability, not just his savagery. What's worse, she felt a powerful, undeniable connection, something that resonated with the forgotten pieces of her own soul. As the wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth, Alaric let out a soft, almost mournful whine, a sound that resonated deep within her. It was a pull she couldn't explain. He was still a monster, but she felt drawn to his brokenness. This was no longer just about survival. It was about something far more profound. The wooden bird, a tiny carved whisper of forgotten beauty, rested in Elara's palm. It gave her courage. She wanted to help him. She couldn't just watch him suffer. So she began searching the castle library, pulling dusty, leather-bound books from shelves, looking for anything about herbs, about healing, about curses. She found old drawings of wolves, powerful and proud, and stories of Lycans, some tragic, some triumphant. Her own memory was a gaping hole, but these old tales felt like echoes, stirring something deep within her. After that, she found a book detailing ancient remedies. One plant, a small leafy green called moon petal, caught her eye. It promised to soothe deep wounds and calm fevered spirits. She knew where to find it. She'd seen similar plants in the hidden garden. With every heartbeat, her resolve grew stronger. She found the moon petal, its delicate leaves frosted but alive. Clutching them, she approached Alaric's lair, a dark alcove where he often rested. He was there, a massive, slumped shadow, his breaths ragged. The wound on his flank looked worse, a raw, angry red. Elara's stomach churned, but she pushed her fear down. She had to try. She knelt slowly. "It's for the pain," she murmured, her voice soft as snow. "Please, let me help." She didn't know what scared her more, his pain or his potential reaction. She reached out, her fingers trembling as they brushed his matted fur. It was coarse, surprisingly warm. A low growl rumbled in his chest, a warning. But it wasn't aggressive. It was a sound of agony. As she began to apply the cool, crushed leaves to the wound, Alaric's body tensed. Without warning, he let out a guttural shriek, a sound of pure, unadulterated torment. He thrashed, his massive head throwing back, not at her, but at the ceiling. His golden eyes, usually so wild, were suddenly filled with tears glistening in the faint light. In that moment, she saw it. A human expression of agony, clear as day, etched onto a beast's face. He was in so much pain. He was suffering. He collapsed then, whimpering, his massive body trembling. Elara stared, her own heart aching. He wasn't just a beast. He was a king trapped inside one. That's why his torment was so profound. It was a human soul caged in a monstrous body. Her resolve hardened. She would help him. She had to. After Alaric's tormented outburst, Elara spent the next few days with a fierce new determination. She continued applying the moon petal, more confident now, because she understood his pain. The plant worked. The wound slowly began to heal, a thin scab forming over the angry red. With every step she took, her hope grew. He seemed calmer now, too. He no longer thrashed in his sleep. His breathing was smoother. One afternoon, she found him sleeping soundly in a sunbeam that pierced a broken window in the dining hall. The air thickened. His fur looked softer in the faint light. She knelt beside him, moon petal in hand. She began to gently stroke his head, her fingers tracing the thick fur around his ears. His breathing hitched. He didn't wake, but a low, rumbling purr, surprisingly soft and deep, vibrated through his chest. It was a sound of pure contentment. Her touch was so gentle, so warm. A powerful, almost electric jolt passed between them. In the span of a breath, Elara's mind was flooded, not with a full memory, but a flash, vivid and startling. She saw a man's face, strong, kind, laughter lines crinkling around those same molten gold eyes. His lips moved, speaking a name she couldn't quite hear, but she felt it. A whisper. Alaric. The beast, still purring, nudged her hand with his nose. He leaned into her touch, his massive body relaxing completely against hers. Desire, raw and untamed, pooled low in her belly. She felt it, clear as day. This connection wasn't just about taming a beast. It was about something ancient, something powerful. Suddenly, a harsh, blaring sound ripped through the quiet castle. A horn. Not the mournful howl of a lone wolf, but a structured, powerful blast, followed by another. And another. Outside, beyond the castle walls, she saw movement. Shadows danced between them. Tiny figures on horseback, their banners snapping in the wind. A shiver of dread went through Elara. This wasn't a rescue. This was an invasion. Caius. The name whispered from her pack returned to her. He was here. Her heart skipped. Her world tilted. Elara scrambled to a high, narrow arrow-slit window. Her breath caught in her throat. The banners were clear now. A snarling wolf's head, but subtly different from her pack's mark. More aggressive, almost predatory. It was indeed Caius's sigil. And there were so many of them. More than she'd ever seen her old pack muster. They rode with a relentless, brutal efficiency, cutting a dark line across the pristine, snow-covered landscape. Caius, she knew, was the new Alpha. The one who had risen to power after the previous king, her intended husband, had vanished. Another open loop. Was he the reason the Lycan King had become a beast? The air thickened with the scent of fear and a bitter metallic tang. Beside her, Alaric, who had woken with the first horn blast, was no longer purring. A growl rose in his throat, low and vibrating, a rumble of ancient warning. His golden eyes, minutes before filled with tenderness, now blazed with a savage ferocity Elara hadn't seen since her arrival. He positioned his massive body between her and the window, a silent, powerful shield. He was protecting her. It wasn't just instinct. It was him. Caius, Elara whispered, the name a bitter taste in her mouth. She could almost hear his sneering voice, the one that had dismissed her so easily. He would see her as a pawn, a nothing. But now she was something more. She was connected to this beast, this king. This terrifying truth was both a burden and a strange source of power. Maybe it was fate that she, the forgotten one, would face the usurper. The rhythmic thud of hooves grew louder, closer. Caius's wolves were fast. They were here. Their intention was clear. Not only that, but she could hear shouted orders, harsh and guttural, even from this distance. They weren't coming for peace. They were coming for conquest. And she and Alaric were in the way. Her immediate goal shifted from tending to the beast to preparing for battle. The stakes were no longer just her survival, but Alaric's very existence. She had to fight. She had to defend this broken king, because he was now a part of her story. As if the world narrowed, Elara's gaze hardened. This desolate castle, once her prison, was now their fortress. The shouts of Caius's approaching pack tore through the frigid air like jagged claws. Elara's heart hammered, but it wasn't just fear now. A different kind of fire bloomed beneath her skin. She wasn't an outcast anymore. She was the one protecting the tormented king. His golden eyes, filled with protective rage, had sparked something powerful inside her. Alaric. The name echoed in her mind, a quiet strength. Her immediate goal was to defend the castle, to buy them time. She had to use every secret passage, every forgotten nook. Quickly, she moved through the vast, cold halls, guiding Alaric with urgent whispers. "This way," she urged, tugging at a piece of tattered tapestry that hid a narrow, winding staircase. Her hands, once fumbling with nets, now moved with a purpose she'd never known. Alaric, despite his beastly form, seemed to understand. He followed, his immense body squeezing through passages no normal wolf could navigate. He moved like a shadow, surprisingly agile. This was the strength of a true Lycan, even one cursed. They barricaded rusted iron grates, pushed heavy stone statues in front of strategic doorways. Each thud of stone echoed her resolve. She remembered dusty old diagrams from the library, maps of the castle's defenses. She used them now, her mind clear, sharper than ever before. She pointed to blind spots in the battlements. She showed him where loose stones could be dislodged. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting. She was leading. Because of that, a surge of power, unfamiliar yet exhilarating, coursed through her veins. She was reclaiming herself. Meanwhile, the sounds of battle grew louder. The first of Caius's wolves were at the outer gate, their growls a hungry chorus. Elara risked a glance from a high window. She saw Caius himself, mounted on a massive black wolf, surveying the castle with a cruel, calculating gaze. He was a picture of cold ambition. "He wants you," she whispered to Alaric, placing a hand on his massive shoulder. His fur, thick and warm beneath her palm, felt like an anchor. He let out a low, vibrating growl, a promise of violence for anyone who dared harm her. Elara felt it, clear as day. They were in this together. And just like that, everything changed. The first wave of Caius's soldiers breached the courtyard, a snarl of dark fur and flashing claws. The air thickened with the scent of fear and fresh blood. Elara and Alaric were in the main hall, having retreated from the courtyard. Elara moved on instinct, dodging a lunging guard. She was quick, nimble, her movements fueled by a desperate need to protect Alaric. But then, a soldier, faster than the others, broke through Alaric's defense. He lunged for Elara, his knife glinting. Time stood still. Elara cried out. Before she could move, Alaric reacted. He moved like a blur, a furious, dark storm. He slammed into the soldier, a thunderous roar tearing from his throat. The guard flew backward, hitting the stone wall with a sickening crack. Alaric stood over Elara, his massive body trembling with controlled rage, shielding her completely. His golden eyes blazed, not with wild madness, but with a primal, possessive fire. Mine. The unspoken word hung in the air between them. The tension broke. The sheer, raw power radiating from him, focused entirely on her protection, overwhelmed her. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might burst. With his scent in the air, a wild mix of ancient forest, primal power, and something uniquely him, she reached out. Her hand found the coarse fur of his muzzle. She cupped his enormous head. He leaned into her touch, a soft purr rumbling deep in his chest. It was a sound of absolute trust, of desire. The space between them burned. Her breath caught. This wasn't just gratitude. This was a connection that transcended words, a raw, untamed passion that ignited a fire deep in her belly. He wasn't just a beast she was taming. He was a creature of profound feeling, capable of fierce protection and tender surrender. And she was drawn to every broken, beautiful part of him. Their lips met. It was clumsy, desperate, tasting of fear and something far older than memory. It was primal. It was profound. It was the ghost of a love she couldn't recall, blazing to life. The soft sounds of their ragged breathing filled the air in the quiet that followed. Their desperate kiss, a raw testament to their growing bond, left Elara shaken. But the quiet was short-lived. Caius, it seemed, was growing impatient. His voice boomed through the castle, amplified by magic or some cruel Lycan trick. Elara, surrender now. Give yourself to your true king. That thing cannot protect you. He is broken, just like your mind. His words were meant to sting. They did. They played on her deepest fear, her amnesia, her perceived uselessness. But instead of breaking her, they ignited a fierce defiance. She wasn't broken. She had found a connection. And Alaric, he was far from useless. As the sky darkened, Caius's forces began a new, more aggressive push. They targeted the section of the castle where Elara and Alaric were hiding. They knew she was here. Caius's voice, closer now, hissed, "Come out, little Luna. Don't you remember your title? Or did that beast finally eat your last useful thought?" Luna. The word hit Elara like a physical blow. Her thoughts spun. It was another whisper from her forgotten past, stronger than Alaric had been. Why did he call her that? What did it mean? She felt a dizzying surge of conflicting emotions, confusion, fear, but also a deep, almost instinctual recognition. As though fate whispered, her wolf pressed forward. What was her title? What had she forgotten? Because of that, a new, desperate urgency filled her. Alaric snarled, his eyes fixed on the encroaching shadows. He understood. He knew they were coming for her. Her instincts surged. She had to evade them, find another way. She tugged Alaric's massive paw, leading him deeper into the labyrinthine depths of the castle, towards the oldest, most forgotten chambers. Each echoing step on the cold stone floor felt like a journey back in time. The air grew heavier, thick with dust and ancient secrets. She felt a pull, a strange sense of familiarity with these hidden passages. It was as if her bones remembered him, remembered this place. This was more than just escaping. This was a return. The ancient chambers, once a fleeting comfort, twisted into a cruel maze. Elara and Alaric moved deeper, the air growing thick with dust and the scent of decay. But Caius, it seemed, knew these hidden ways even better. He was like a poison seeping through the castle's very stone. A low, mocking laugh echoed through the darkness ahead. "Playing hide-and-seek, little Luna? Don't you remember our games, brother?" The word brother hung in the air, a chilling revelation. An open loop, a new piece of the terrifying puzzle. Suddenly, lights flared. Torches, held by Caius's wolves, materialized from hidden alcoves, blinding them. It was a trap. Caius himself emerged, stepping from a shadowed archway. His eyes, cold as a winter night, fixed on Elara. His smile was sharp, like a wolf's fangs. "Got you," Alaric roared. A sound of pure, unadulterated fury that vibrated through the ancient stones. He lunged, a massive, dark blur. But Caius was ready. He moved with a speed that shocked Elara, not a Lycan's brute force, but something almost supernatural. He raised a hand, and a sickly green light flared from his palm, striking Alaric. The beast staggered, a pained whimper tearing from his throat. The raw magic ripped through him. Alaric convulsed, his powerful limbs buckling. He hit the stone floor with a sickening thud, his body still, except for shallow, ragged breaths. His golden eyes, usually so bright with fierce life, were dimming, a flicker of awareness fading like a dying ember. Elara screamed. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't reach him. Caius's wolves, a dozen or more, swarmed her, their hands grasping, pulling. She fought, her instincts surging, clawing and biting like a cornered animal. But she was only one against many. They dragged her away, pulling her further from Alaric, towards Caius. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it might explode. This was it, her greatest fear, losing him, seeing him helpless. It was a major setback. Caius stood over Elara, his boot pressing lightly on her pinned arm. His face, once handsome, was now twisted with triumph and a chilling cruelty. He was no older than Alaric, yet his eyes held an ancient, malevolent gleam. Alaric lay unmoving just yards away, a broken giant. Elara's breath hitched. She fought against the restraints, her muscles screaming. "Such a pretty little fool," Caius purred, his voice slick as oil. "You almost had him. Almost brought him back." He knelt, his eyes locking onto hers. "But not quite. Because you couldn't remember, could you? You couldn't remember what truly binds him. What truly breaks him." He paused, letting the words sink in. He wanted her to feel the weight of his power, the despair of her own ignorance. "You weren't just his mate, Elara," he continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, meant for her ears alone. "You were his wife, his queen, before I took it all away." A cold, hard knot formed in Elara's stomach. The truth unraveled. She saw flashes, not full memories, but fleeting images, a sunlit clearing, the warmth of a hand in hers, a promise whispered under a crescent moon. Her chest ached. You did this?" she choked out, tears blurring her vision. Rage, hot and blinding, flared through her. He had stolen her life. He had stolen their life. He had stolen her very self, and he wanted her to feel that pain. "Oh, yes." He leaned closer, his scent cloying, triumphant. "The attack, the curse, and your pretty little mind. Wiped clean. A blank slate. So much easier to steal a throne when its Luna doesn't even remember she is a Luna." He laughed, a short, sharp bark of triumph. "Now watch as your beast dies, and you will be mine." He stood, gesturing to his soldiers. "Finish it! End the beast!" Elara screamed, a guttural sound of raw despair. She writhed against her captors, her pleas dying in her throat. Her goal was to save Alaric, but she was powerless. Her memories were returning, but it was too late. This was her lowest point. Caius's men, grim-faced, approached Alaric. Their blades glinted in the torchlight. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. She couldn't look away. Every breath was a choked sob. The revelation of her forgotten marriage, her stolen past. It was overwhelming, a tidal wave of grief and betrayal that threatened to drown her. Her head spun. She felt utterly broken, consumed by this devastating truth. She was his queen, and she had forgotten him. She had lost 5 years. 5 years of his suffering, 5 years of her own emptiness. And now, he would die. Just as the first soldier raised his blade, Alaric let out a roar. Not the tormented beast growl from before, but a sound of pure, desperate defiance. A sound of agony. It was a guttural, primal scream that shook the very foundations of the castle. "Alaric!" Elara's mind screamed his name, the name from her fleeting memory, now anchoring itself in her rediscovered consciousness. The roar wasn't just sound, it was a wave of pure magic, a surge of Alaric's fading power. It smashed against Elara, and her mind exploded. The fragments of memory, the whispers, the fleeting images, they crashed together, shattering the walls around her forgotten past. She saw it all. Their wedding, a joyous blur of white and green, his strong, kind smile, her hand in his, their first dance, the scent of pine and his unique warmth. Then, the attack. Caius's cruel smile, the flash of dark magic, Alaric's scream as he transformed, her own mind shattering into a million pieces. She collapsed, overwhelmed by the vivid, painful return of her past. Tears streamed down her face, a mix of rediscovering profound love and reliving devastating trauma. She was still bound. Alaric was still a beast, barely breathing. Caius stood victorious. The goal seemed impossible. Her body trembled, racked by sobs. In the quiet that followed, Elara lay in the dust, her world a whirlwind of remembered joy and rediscovered pain. She had found her memories, but it felt like she had lost everything else. The man she loved, the life she had, was slipping away. The world spun, a kaleidoscope of agonizing memories and raw, burning love. Elara lay on the cold stone floor, the taste of dust and tears in her mouth. Caius's cruel laughter echoed around her, but it faded, drowned out by the thunder of her own returning past. She saw Alaric's kind smile, the warmth of his hand in hers, the solemn vows exchanged under a sky dusted with stars. She remembered the day she became his queen, not just his mate. It wasn't a dream. It was real. Then, the horror, Caius's betrayal, the flash of dark magic, Alaric's primal scream as the curse took hold, twisting his magnificent form, and her own mind, shattering into a million pieces, leaving her adrift and forgotten. The pain was unbearable, a fresh wound carved into her soul. Yet, amidst the agony, a fierce, burning resolve ignited. She wasn't weak. Her amnesia hadn't made her useless. It had been a weapon used against her. She understood it all now. She looked at Alaric, still a broken beast on the floor, his breath shallow. Caius stood over him, a triumphant sneer twisting his lips. He was about to deliver the final blow. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't break free from her bonds. But then a thought clear as crystal cut through her despair. Her voice, filled with love and memory, was the anchor. It was the only thing that could reach him, because their bond wasn't just physical, it was soul-deep. She felt it, clear as day. A surge of power, unfamiliar yet exhilarating, coursed through her veins. This wasn't just a revelation, it was a profound truth. She was Luna Elara, Alaric's queen, and her love was the key. She would not let Caius win. She would fight, not with claws and teeth, but with the full force of her remembered past, her unbreakable bond. Her heart pounded, a battle drum for the storm to come. Caius was a shadow looming over Alaric, his hand poised to strike. But then Elara's voice, though still rough with tears, cut through the air, clear and strong. "Alaric!" she cried, his true name ringing out like a bell. It had been years since it was spoken in this castle. "My king, remember me." Caius froze, his head snapping towards her, his eyes narrowing. "Silence, you fool," he snarled, taking a step towards her. His loyalists moved to silence her, but Elara ignored them, her gaze fixed on the broken beast. She needed to reach him, because her very soul depended on it. "Do you remember the star-kissed grove?" she pleaded, her voice trembling yet resolute. She poured every ounce of her rediscovered love into her words. "Our vows, Alaric, under the twin moons, the silver threads we wove into our fur. You promised me forever." Alaric's beastly form began to convulse, a low guttural moan ripping from his throat. It was a sound of immense struggle, a battle raging within him. The curse was fighting back, But Elara didn't stop. "The carved bird you gave me," she cried, remembering the small wooden token. "You said it was a symbol of my freedom, my spirit. You said I was your sky, Alaric." Caius roared, a sound of pure fury. He lunged for her, abandoning Alaric for a moment, desperate to silence her. He knew the power of those memories. He knew what she was doing. He knew what she remembered. "Silence her! Now!" he shrieked at his men. But his movements were too slow. Elara felt it, clear as day, the tremor through the floor, the deep thrumming in the air. As if summoned, the very castle seemed to hum with ancient power. Alaric's struggle intensified. He was fighting. He was hearing her. Caius's loyalists, grim-faced and brutish, surged towards Elara, but she met their gaze, no longer the terrified outcast. Her voice, though strained from crying out Alaric's name, was steady. "You serve a false king," she declared, her voice ringing with rediscovered authority. "He stole this throne. He cursed your true king." Her words were not just defiance. They were a strategic move, meant to sow doubt among Caius's forces, to break their unity. A few of the wolves hesitated, their eyes flickering with uncertainty. Caius, enraged, diverted his attention fully to her. He was a master of manipulation, and her challenge to his authority was unbearable. "She lies!" he shrieked. "She's mad with her broken mind." He lunged, a flash of teeth and claws, intending to tear her down himself. But Elara was ready. Her body moved on instinct, dodging his furious swipe. She was nimble, surprisingly agile, using the ancient hall's pillars and crumbling walls to her advantage. She wasn't fighting like a warrior, she was fighting like a strategist, using her environment, using her wits. She pulled a loose section of a tattered tapestry, sending it billowing into Caius's path, momentarily blinding him. This bought Alaric crucial seconds. Meanwhile, Alaric's struggles intensified. His massive beastly form writhed, a whirlwind of dark fur and tormented muscle. The ground trembled. A strange, shimmering light, sickly green and vibrant gold, pulsed around him as the curse battled against the returning king. Elara heard the snapping of bone, the tearing of muscle, but it wasn't a sound of agony. It was a sound of change. It was the sound of rebirth. "Fight it, Alaric!" she screamed, her voice hoarse, tears streaming down her face. But these were tears of hope. "Come back to me. Come back to your queen." The air crackled with raw magic, a powerful energy that hummed around them. Caius, recovering, let out a frustrated snarl, realizing his prey was slipping away. He lunged at Elara again, his eyes burning with desperate fury, knowing this was his last chance. But then a blinding flash of golden light erupted from Alaric's struggling form, momentarily engulfing the entire hall. The climax was here. A blinding flash of golden light erupted from Alaric, pushing back the shadows, pushing back Caius's snarling form. The air crackled. The ancient castle groaned. Elara shielded her eyes, her heart aching with a desperate hope. When the light faded, the beast was gone. In its place stood a man, tall, powerful, and utterly magnificent. His hair, dark as midnight, framed a face etched with the pain of 5 years, but his golden eyes, those familiar, soul-deep golden eyes, were clear, intelligent, and filled with a fierce, unwavering love for her. "Elara," he rasped, his voice raw but unmistakably human. His true name, a precious secret, hung in the air. Just like that, he reached out, his hand, no longer a claw, breaking her bonds with a single sharp snap. Freedom. A profound tremor went through her. Caius screamed, a sound of pure, desperate rage. "No, you cannot!" I cursed him. He lunged for Alaric, his own body shifting, a corrupted, weaker Lycan form. But Alaric met him. The fight was brutal, a whirlwind of muscle and fury. Alaric fought with the coiled power of a king denied, 5 years of torment fueling every blow. Elara watched, no longer helpless. She saw the rage in Alaric's eyes, but also a chilling, focused precision. This was the true Lycan King. As they clashed, Elara remembered something from her past. a hidden weakness. A secret about Caius's dark magic gleaned from a forgotten conversation. She cried out, "His left side, Alaric! His power source!" It was a gamble. It was a memory. But Alaric heard her. He used her words. He feigned a strike to Caius's right, then twisted, slamming his fist into Caius's left flank. A shriek of agony ripped from Caius. His corrupted form flickered, then collapsed. His borrowed power, stolen and twisted, withered away. Alaric stood over him, victorious, breathing heavily, but undeniably himself. The central conflict was resolved. The sudden silence in the great hall was deafening. It felt heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and the aftermath of battle. Caius lay unmoving, reduced to a whimpering, unconscious human, his magical power drained. Alaric, now fully human, turned to Elara. His golden eyes, filled with a raw, overwhelming emotion, drank her in. He was here. He was him. "My Luna," he murmured, his voice hoarse with emotion, and pulled her into his arms. The embrace was fierce, desperate, full of years of unspoken longing. Elara buried her face in his shoulder, inhaling his scent, pine, snow, and a deep, comforting warmth that was uniquely Alaric. Tears, hot and uncontrollable, streamed down her face, a mix of relief, exhaustion, and overwhelming joy. This was the man from her memories. This was her husband. This was her king. Soon after, a few figures emerged from the shadows. Old, wizened wolves, trembling but with hope in their eyes. Alaric's loyalists who had hidden in the castle for years, awaiting his return. They recognized him instantly. They knelt, tears flowing freely. "My king," they whispered, their voices hoarse with reverence. Alaric nodded, his gaze unwavering, acknowledging their loyalty. "Secure Caius," he commanded, his voice firm, the sound of a true leader. "He will answer for his treachery." Then he turned back to Elara, his hand gently tracing her cheek. "We have much to discuss, my love. 5 years. They were stolen from us." Elara leaned into his touch. She knew it would be a long road, filled with difficult conversations and painful truths. But now, they would face it together. Months later, the Lycan King's castle was no longer a desolate tomb. Workmen bustled through the halls, repairing shattered walls, replacing brittle tapestries, and rekindling ancient hearths. The air hummed with activity, with the scent of fresh mortar and blooming life. It wasn't merely a restoration of stone, it was a rebirth of spirit. Elara stood beside Alaric in the newly grand throne room. Sunlight streamed through sparkling, clean windows, illuminating the intricate carvings on their shared throne. She no longer wore the rough clothes of an outcast. Instead, she wore simple, elegant gowns, gifts from the newly arrived wolves eager to serve their true queen. Her memories, once a fractured puzzle, were now whole, a rich tapestry of love and loss. She was Elara, Luna of the Lycans, and her past, once a source of shame, was now her strength. She understood that, because it showed her everything she had overcome. "The northern territories are secure, my queen," an elder wolf reported, bowing respectfully. Elara smiled, nodding. Her empathy, once only for Alaric, now extended to her entire pack. She offered counsel, gentle yet firm, her wisdom a calm counterpoint to Alaric's fiery passion. They were a formidable pair. Their reign was not built on fear, but on a love that had defied death, memory loss, and unimaginable betrayal. It was a legend whispered among all the Lycan packs. Alaric, now fully the king he was meant to be, often found her in the restored garden. He would watch her tend the moon petal, the plant that had first soothed his torment. He'd pull her close, burying his face in her hair. "My Luna," he'd murmur, the words a blessing. Epilogue. Years melted into decades. The Lycan King and his forgotten Luna became more than just rulers. They became a cornerstone of Lycan history. Their castle, vibrant and thriving, stood as a beacon of enduring love. Their children, strong and bright-eyed, played in the very halls where their father had once roamed as a beast and their mother had clung to fading hope. They were told the tale of the ultimate betrayal, of memory lost, and of a love so profound it broke a curse. Elara, now with silver threads woven into her own dark hair, often sat by the fire, watching Alaric. He was still her king, still her mate, still the man whose eyes held the entire universe for her. She would sometimes think of the young, scared outcast who arrived at that desolate castle. She remembered the terrifying truth she'd kept locked away, that she knew the beast. She often wondered how she could have been so blind to the love story written in her own forgotten heart, the love story that had, in the end, saved them both. Their bond was not just love. It was a profound connection that had reshaped their world, becoming a legend whispered through generations,